To make a post or I want to make a vlog about this particular message and this particular video that I found on Facebook. I'm not going to show the guy's name, not that it matters, but he shared this video of this conservative woman who voted for Trump, who was shamed because she voted for Trump, and other women turned their backs on her because and talked down on her because she had voted for Trump, claiming that she wasn't a feminist and she wasn't on the team of women or whatever. So even though I don't necessarily agree with Trump and I don't necessarily agree with his character per se, I think that he's probably just another pawn. I mean, the elite, the people who really run the country, who own the Federal Reserve, who own corporations that really run the world, they play both sides against each other. Okay, this dichotomy, this illusion that we're separated really kind of works to keep us divided. I mean, it's there for a reason. We're called the United States. United we stand, yet we are divided in our politics. We're divided in our, morality. We're divided in our religion. We're divided on so many things, and I believe it's that way. There's the illusion of freedom. There's the illusion of choice and things like that. Like, you have a choice to believe whatever you want, and you do, but it doesn't mean that those things aren't divisive factors, right? So a lot of the reason why there's so much turmoil in our country, a lot of the reason why there's so much turmoil in our nation is because people are so divided here. But again, at the same time, everybody should have freedom to believe what they want, etc. Problem is when it comes to tribalism and when it comes to bipartisanism, these different sections or these different sects, if you will, sects, sects of political belief, which really is just political belief. If you boil it down, is social belief. It's things that you believe, how society should be run, etc. And as we've seen, particularly in the last 10 to 20 years, the cult of the left, and I say the cult because it literally has become a cult. Leftism has become a cult. Liberalism has become a cult. They've really become fascist in their and I know people would take me to the definition of fascism, that it's supposedly a quote-unquote right-wing ideology. However, the tenets of fascism and the way they behave is similar to how the left and Antifa really behaves. And I think it was Ronald Reagan. Was it Ronald Reagan? No, maybe it was Lyndon Johnson. Anyway, some president said, if there ever is, or he said, if fascism ever does come to America, it's going to come as liberalism. And I believe that's what's happened. I believe that's what's happened in the last 10 to 20 years, is that liberalism has, liberalism / socialism / communism / PC culture / SJW culture has morphed into real totalitarianism, real fascism. If you don't think everything they think, if you don't believe everything they believe, then you are deemed an enemy, and that's what this woman is going through. So in a minute, I'm going to show you the video where she's talking about how women who claim to be feminists turn their backs on her, and she sort of sticks up for her decision to vote for Donald Trump. Now again, I don't believe Donald Trump necessarily was how do I put it? I don't think he necessarily is a good charactered man, but he was the best choice for the situation. He was better than Hillary, and everybody knows how evil she was. So it's clear to see how the evil elite manufacture things, and they play both sides. And I do think Trump is just another puppet for Israel. I do think he's just another puppet for the war machine that is nationalist Zionism, okay? Which is essentially Nazi, which is a weird twist of kind of a mind fuck. It's easy to go down a rabbit hole and try to figure all that out. Why were Nazis called National Zionists? Why why are the Jews Zionists? Why is Zionism all about? There's so much you can go down there, and with at the end of that rabbit hole is really just something you don't want to get into. It's something that I stopped getting into about 4 years ago, and I just said, you know what, I'm backing out. I'm tired of these conspiracy theories. I'm tired of hyping this stuff up, because there really is no end, and the end is not something that you're going to want to witness, and it's not something that you're going to want to know about. It's not something that you're going to want to think about. You'd be a lot better just to live your life and just try to be happy in this fucked up world that we live in. But with that said, every once in a while I like to talk about it, and every once in a while I like to bring it up, and right now is probably going to be one of those times. So this guy made a quote, and I'm going to see if I can get it in focus on my phone. Women in general need to wake up to the Luciferian, Marxist-driven, feminist agenda implemented to control female opinion in order to subvert men. Fathers, sons, and brothers to Luciferian doctrine that a woman is God of men. Feminism is not about the rights of women according to its founder, Satan. It is about women being gods of men, and if Ashtoreth gets it right in politics, we will have a world ruled by Ashtoreth, Cleopatra, and her lord Lucifer. An Ashtoreth, I believe, is from the Old Testament, and it's a female deity. They used to make these Ashtoreths, which were essentially the figure or figurines, if you will, or essentially idols. Female idols is essentially what an Ashtoreth is. It's female worship. Ashtoreth is the worship of females. So what he's saying here is that there's an agenda in politics and in society and in social culture to push a female worship on society. And he's saying that feminism, particularly Luciferian, Marxist-driven feminism, is the wheel that is pushing this forward. And I agree with him 100,000%. I've seen this from the very, very, very beginning. Before I even discovered Red Pill, before I even discovered MGTOW, I was starting to see this. And living in liberal Seattle, I was on the front lines, so to speak. It is female worship, feminism, and a lot of what is going on, particularly a lot of the predictive programming, and particularly a lot of what's going on in mainstream pop culture, movies, pornography, obviously, music, particularly the entertainment business, is female worship, and it's subversive, predictive programming in order to get people to behave a certain way, to act a certain way, to do certain things, and it's satanic, frankly. And you can study this stuff, and you can trace it back to, again, Luciferian, Marxist-driven feminism. However, the people behind that, again, are Luciferians. They are people who literally run Hollywood. They are people who literally run the entertainment business, the music business, and they pump out and they push out certain types of content that essentially brainwash young people. And it sounds crazy. It sounds, conspiracy theory, nutty, but if you really break it down, that's what it is. Go look at Beyonce, go look at Rihanna, go look at Britney Spears, go look at Keisha, go look at Lady Gaga, go look at Cardi B, go look at Nicki Minaj. I just named 5 or 6 incredibly famous women. Jennifer Lopez, okay, these incredibly famous women who are so-called quote-unquote divas. These are the women that young women are looking up to, and they're taking their cues from these women. These women are whores. These women are drug addicts. These women are messed up, and there's even, theories that these women are programmed from something called monarch programming. I would even throw Miley Cyrus in there. Okay. The list goes on. All these women that they're putting out there in a certain way, they're selling sex. And if you look at their body of work, if you look at what they do, Iggy Azalea, if you look at what they do, if you look at what the content that they put out, it is satanic in nature. okay? And you can study videos on this. I don't know if these videos are still up on YouTube, but there's video after video after video exposing these women to Luciferian rituals, Luciferian hidden meanings in their music videos, etc. And you can even look up top male stars who do the same things. You know the likes of Jay-Z, Justin Bieber, Eminem. The list goes on. All these people who are even actors, Johnny Depp. The list goes on, and you can look up all this stuff. So before I talk too long about that, I want to just play this video of her. Again, that was never really my thing to be a conspiracy theorist, but in the context of, when it comes to men, and when it comes to men's rights, and when it comes to how women treat men, and when it comes to how society, the interpersonal relationships between men and women, how society is so messed up, I think it's really pertinent and important to understand this type of thing, to understand that this is what's driving it. This is the fuel that's behind all this bad behavior from women. And of course, yes, it's layers upon layers. It's the government coddling the women. It's the parents failing the women. It's society. It's so much. It's gynocentrism. It's even female nature, right? But if you understand the focus and you understand who's pushing the programming, then you'll have a better understanding of, essentially the source. Right? So they use female nature, they use the worst parts of female nature to exploit the women and drive the women away from proper love, proper relationships, proper emotions. They teach them negative, toxic emotions, negative, toxic behavior through these stars, through this programming, through society that they're engineering. It's called social engineering. Okay? It's essentially a form of social control, and the reason they're doing it is because they want to disrupt the nuclear family unit. This is Luciferian. It's satanic in nature. Why? Because Satan hates man, because man in the New Testament, man in the Bible, is representative of God over the household. Man as leader over the household is a representative of God. It's a type or a figure of God's rule over the universe. So for Satan to uplift women over men and these asterisks, which is essentially female idolatry, which is what these women are, your Beyoncés, your Rihannas, your Britney Spears, your Lady Gagas, etc. These women are asterisks. They are types and figures of idol. It's idolatry. Mariah Carey, the list goes on. These women are idols. They even call them idols. American Idol, right? There's subtle programming that people are just simply not educated enough to understand, because it's deep, and it's satanic, and it's Luciferian in nature, and that's the fuel that's pushing it out. So if you understand that this is their goal, to uplift women over men, this is the feminist goal, second and third wave feminism, which is not about equality, it's about women empowerment, and that's a very broad, vague term, but this is what you're always hearing: women empowerment, and this is what these people are doing. They're getting on these talk shows, they're getting into colleges, they're blogging, they're getting on social media, they're influencing society to behave a certain way around women, to treat women a certain way, and they're influencing women to behave a certain way, and it's literally ruining women. And the aim and the goal, quote unquote, female empowerment within that, what's hidden within that, is to tear down men. Why? Because Satan does not like men. Because man was created in God's image. This is why Satan does not like men. Man was created in God's image. The female was not. The female, if you remember Genesis, if you read the Old Testament, the female was taken from man's rib. So the female was not made first. Man was made first. Adam came first, then it was Eve. Eve was taken from the man's rib, right? Adam was the one who was created in God's image, not Eve. And if you notice in the Garden of Eden, when Satan tempted Eve, he didn't go to Adam first, he went to Eve. And it's the same principle today. It's the exact same principle today. Satan goes to the women, and these Luciferians and this social engineering are his minions, the people he works through, his tools, his vehicle, in order to push this program of attacking men through. Okay. they're the ones who push this agenda, this feminist agenda, which is essentially empowering women to do quote unquote everything a man can do, but really it becomes worship. It becomes female worship. They're not loving men. They're not treating men right. They're asserting themselves over men, which was the original sin of Satan. He tried to assert himself and dominate over God, and God said, I'm having none of that, and he kicked Satan out of heaven, and that's how Satan came to earth. So it's the same old story, the same old tricks from the serpent. He's trying to get to the female like he did in the Garden of Eden. If Eve would have went to her husband and stood behind her husband and said, I'm not going to listen to anything you say, serpent, I'm going to talk to my husband, then the whole story might have gone differently. But she didn't. She listened to the serpent, and she became she sinned. She took in the we all know what happened. She took in the fruit, and then she gave it to Adam, and then subsequently Satan entered into mankind, and everything was ruined, and they disobeyed God, and God had to kick them out of the Garden of Eden. So that's the story, but this is the same thing that is going on today. He's tempting the women to assert themselves and assert their will over the man's will, and there is no headship anymore. Men don't have headship in the family anymore. There's no male leadership anymore. They call it the patriarchy. If you notice, feminists attack it, and they view it as if it's misogynistic. But actually, that's the way the Bible intended. God is head over man. Man is head over woman in the household, and that's the divine order. And the parents are head over the children. That is the divine order that God established, and this is what is trying to be attacked by these feminists. And frankly, they're succeeding. So. But anyway, let me go to this interview. Now, this is obviously Fox News, which is right leaning. I'm just going to let you listen to it, and then I'm going to talk briefly about how I feel about it.
It's a common talking point among feminists claiming to support women, unless, of course, you voted for President Trump. Listen.
When I see women doing that, I think, why are they publicly disrespecting themselves? Why are they opening the door to have someone say that about them in their workplace?
There's just no evidence that he has an understanding of what women's lives are like today. Our next guest argues feminism has very little to do with women, instead arguing, quote, it's an elitist exclusive club where the rights of women are championed only if you are a certain brand of woman and only if it suits a liberal political agenda. Joining us now is freelance writer and former press assistant for Senator Rick Santorum, Lauren DeBellis Appel. Thank you, Lauren, for being with us.
Good morning, Ainsley.
Good morning. So I read your op-ed, but for the folks at home that didn't read it, what is your message?
Well, I think millions of people just like me that voted for President Trump, and there's 42% of us that voted for him and chose not to vote for Hillary Clinton. We are tired of hearing from people like her and Michelle Obama and liberal Hollywood elitists that we should vote for somebody just because they're a woman. We're tired of being lectured to about what we should think and what we should believe and who we should vote for. We're intelligent people and we could think for ourselves. And the definition of feminism is to think independently, and apparently that's not what we're allowed to do anymore.
A lot of Republicans say the feminists are teaching tolerance of everyone, women's rights, unless you think differently than they do. Do you agree with that?
Correctly. Correct. You're allowed to you're not allowed to think differently than they do. Mm-hmm. And if you do, you're shamed and you're ostracized by them and by the Hollywood elitists that think like them. And we don't want to be lectured to anymore.
People were really they were so upset with Hillary, as you remember, when she said the deplorables, calling all the people who support Donald Trump deplorable. She lost a lot of votes because of that. She is in that soundbite that we played at the beginning, at the top of this interview. She said if you voted for President Trump, you're disrespecting yourself. Do you take offense to that? You're disrespecting yourself if you're a Trump supporter.
I absolutely take offense to that. You know, again, like I said, we're a large group of people. There were 42% of us that voted for President Trump, and you know, we're moms like I am. We're working career women. We're intelligent people. We can think for ourselves. We didn't, like she said, necessarily take our cues from our husbands and our boyfriends. We decided for ourselves who we could vote for, and we didn't need to be told, and we didn't just get in line just because they told us to and vote for a woman just because it was a woman that's running. I mean, quite honestly, you know, that's what she ran on. You know, we were told that we were supposed to vote for her because she was a woman. And, you know, voting for someone just because all they bring to the table is their gender is honestly the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
So what is your message to feminists this morning?
It's, you know, I think we need to be more inclusive. I think that we need to support each other no matter what our views are. And I think that we need to stop lecturing each other. We can think for ourselves. And the definition of feminism is thinking independently. You know, we can decide for ourselves what we believe. We're intelligent human beings, and we don't need to be told what to do.
Okay.
We can choose that for ourselves.
Thank you so much, Lauren. You can catch the op-ed.
Okay, so I fully agree with what she's saying. Essentially, she's just saying, hey, if you don't think everything that these liberal feminists think, then they're going to attack you and they're going to disassociate from you and you're their enemy. So which is, you know, that's cultism, right? So she's saying these people claim to be feminists, yet they don't support independent female belief. They claim to be feminists, but they say if you're not voting the same way, or you don't think the same way, or you don't hate the same people we hate, then you're not one of us, which is the definition of a cult. It's a group of exclusivity. And she's saying, hey, wait a minute, I can vote for who I want to vote for. To me, feminism is about independence, and as an independent woman, I can independently pick my own side or independently pick what I think, and that's what it is. So it's just further proof that these people are these lefty, you know, feminists are really not for women. They really don't care about women ultimately. They're just using the quote unquote oppression and women's rights movement and all these you know, hotbed issues and philosophies. They're using that for their ultimate goal, which is, you know, their own type of implementation into society. But with that said, like I said, I think the people who really run the world are playing both sides against each other. I think that they, I think that, how do I put it? They're not, so for Trump to get in is not like, oh, okay, Trump is the savior or anything like that. I think he's one of them. It's just that, you know, they play both sides against each other for the benefits. And I think that they want to destabilize society as much as they can without throwing society into utter chaos, because if society was in utter chaos, they wouldn't be able to get anything out of it. They wouldn't be able to control us. They wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't be good workers. We wouldn't be able to make them their money. They want society to some degree to be functional. They just don't want the kind of society that is worshiping God. They don't want the kind of society that is where they don't want this. They don't want society to be too stable, right? So essentially, you have to look at it like this. What do they get out of it? What they get out of it is they get rulership. But if it's too stable, then people might get smart and say, hey, wait a minute. You know, where's our money going? Who are the people who's ruling over us? What about this? What about that? If people get too smart, then they could come after them. So they have to destabilize it to some degree, and they want to push their immoral agenda. These people, you know, do as thou wilt, Luciferian type of people are not moral people. They're pedophiles in many cases. They're sexual deviants. They're et cetera, et cetera. They're not the type of people that are pushing like quality, moral, monogamy type of things. These people are sick